Welcome back. Today's lesson is going to be on decimals, and I know you're waiting for today's riddle. So, why don't aliens eat clowns? As always, you're going to have to wait till the end of the lesson for the answer. So what are you going to learn about today? Well, today when you're learning about decimals, you're going to learn what decimals are, how to read and write tenths and hundredths, how decimals are represented on grids, and where to find a decimal on a number line. So hopefully all of this is going to be a repeat of things that you learned in 4th grade already. Maybe I'll teach you something you didn't know, but pay attention and be sure you're completing your whisk as you go along. So, decimals are actually a type of fraction. In fact, in some countries they actually call them decimal fractions instead of just decimals. So here I've got the two numbers 3/10 and 74/100. So if I was going to write the fraction 3/10 as a decimal, it would look like this, 0.3, and we would read that 0 and 3/10. The number or fraction 74 out of 100, 74/100, would be written as 0.74. And again, we would read that 0 and 74/100. So let's just kind of review how you read decimals. Well, before we do that, let's look at what decimals are and just kind of realize that decimals are really all around us. Sometimes they don't always look the way we think they should, like in this grocery ad. The nectarines are 97 cents. That's really 0.97, meaning that there's 97 parts of 100. And decimals also come in sports statistics. So here I have the averages for the Spurs for this last year, and you can compare and see that Tony Parker played 32 and 9/10 minutes per game. Well, Matt Bonner only played 13 and 4/10 minutes per game. And you can see their field goal percentages and so forth. All of these are represented as decimals. So now let's look at how we read decimals and where they come from. So this number here is sometimes said 3.24. That's not a really great way to say a decimal, especially if you're a 5th grader. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off by reading the whole number 3. When I get to the decimal point, I'm going to say and then I'm going to read the 24 as 24. But then I have to give it the name of the place value farthest to the right. So here's a place value chart. The 2 is in the tenths and the 4 is in the hundredths. So this number is going to end with the word hundredths. And notice I'm putting that TH at the end of it. So this is 3 and 24 hundredths. And again, we do the same thing here. Here my whole number is 45 and my decimal part is 6 and it only goes to the tenths place. So that number is 45 and 6/10. So representing decimals on grids. By understanding how to represent a decimal on grid, you'll also get a better understanding of why the decimal place values have the names that they have. So look at the grid on this slide. There are 4 parts out of 10 shaded in. So we would write that as the fraction 4/10. But as a decimal, it would be written as 0.4. Both of these numbers are red 4/10. One thing to notice is that you have 1 0 here, and you have 1 place after the decimal point. 1 0, 1 place after the decimal point. So what would happen if I would come in here and divide this into 100 parts? Well, now, if you look at it, the area of the shading didn't change, but the number of parts shaded changed. There are now 40 parts shaded in out of 100, and that's going to be written as 40 out of 100. And again, take a good look at this. There are 2 zeros, and I ended up with 2 spaces after my decimal point. So I have 0 and 40 hundredths. So thinking about this, remember the area didn't change. So 4/10 and 40 hundredths are the same number. They are called equivalent decimals. So let's take a look at another grid. Here's the grid, and how many are shaded in? There are 33 shaded in. So that would be the fraction 33 over 100 and the decimal 33 hundredths. Again, both of them are the read the same way normally, 33 hundredths. And finally, we can look at decimals that have some holes too. So here we have two grids that are completely shaded in, plus a partial grid that has 47 sections shaded in. So that's going to be the mixed number 2 and 47 hundredths. And again, as a decimal, you would get rid of the denominator and just put the decimal point and write 47 hundredths. And I will point out again, I have 2 zeros and I have 2 spaces after my decimal point. Really important concept there. It's going to help you out a lot this year. Okay, so how about on a number line? Well, if a decimal doesn't have a whole number written in front of the decimal point, to the left of the decimal point, then that number falls between 0 and 1 on a number line. So I have 1/10, I would have 2/10 and 3/10, 4/10, 5/10, 6/10, 7/10, 8/10, 9/10, and then I would be up to 1. Now it's totally possible that I could take these numbers and divide them farther down. So there are actually some numbers between each of these. So let's look at what happens between 3/10 and 4/10. Well, we're going to divide it out. So first I've got 31 hundredths, 32 hundredths, 33 hundredths, 34 hundredths, 35 hundredths, 36 hundredths, 37 hundredths, 38 hundredths, 39 hundredths. And the reason that works is because we're always going to split each section into 10 parts. So if I divided each one of these into 10 parts up here, I'd have 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 parts in between 0 and 1. Now, it's also possible that I could move this to a different place. I could go between 7 and 8. Okay, this is supposed to be an 8 here, guys. I'm not going to stop the recording this time to fix that. But let's look between 7 and 3/10, 7 and 4/10. And again, it's going to be just like before. I'm going to have 7 and 31 hundredths, 7 and 32 hundredths, 7 and 33 hundredths, 7 and 34 hundredths, 7 and 35 hundredths, 7 and 36 hundredths, 7 and 37 hundredths, 7 and 38 hundredths, 7 and 39 hundredths. Next would be 7 and 40 hundredths, but we can say that as 7 and 4/10. So that's all there is to being able to know what a decimal is, how to read decimals, how to write them. You can put together from reading the decimals, representing them on grids, and representing them on number lines. So remember to complete your WISC and take your quiz. Okay, are you ready for the riddle? Why don't aliens eat clowns? Of course, because they taste funny. I'll see you in class tomorrow. Have a great night.